He had perfectionist tendencies. Elton John's 1970 producer, Gus Dudgeon. He produced a lot of stuff after the 70s, but the heyday, as you know, for Elton John was, of course, the 1970s. And after Empty Sky, Gus Dudgeon took over for the self-titled Elton John album in 1970, and all the way up, it was a string of really good hits. And as I've gotten to know more with talking to the Elton John band through the years, different versions of the Elton John band, there's one thing about Gus Dudgeon. He was a real perfectionist and could drive people crazy, but man, the sound he got. In this one, we talked to a gentleman who just released a documentary. He played with Elton John right until Madman Across the Water, then came back for Blue Moves. Well, Rock of the Westies, then Blue Moves. The link to his documentary, Louder Than Rock, is in the description. Caleb Quaye, the great Caleb Quaye, talks about Gus Dudgeon, who produced all those Elton John hits. I was just clipping together an interview with Stuart Epps, and really long interview, and we started talking about Gus Dudgeon. And now I don't know. I don't know if it was Davey who told me, someone who opened the can of worms, and it was the obvious thing as a fan I didn't know, that Gus was such a perfectionist.
Yeah.
Like, he's talking about a drum sound, and I mean, you know, we're also talking about Roger and Nigel here, but of spending so much time on, what was your first impression? When did you first notice that, man, he wants to do it right?
Oh, I think that was when I worked with him on the first Elton John album, you know, the one with Your Song and everything, you know. And, he was... Yeah, definitely a perfectionist. He had his own, you know, his own concept, you know, of what he wanted things to sound like, you know. And on that album, he also worked with a brilliant engineer, Robin Cable, at Trident Studios. So for that album and the Tumbleweed Connection album as well. So yeah, no, I knew from the get-go, Gus was a perfectionist, you know. It was interesting. He was a perfectionist, but I mean, with me and some other musicians, I think there was a combination of being a perfectionist, but also giving the musicians, you know, free rein to contribute.
Yeah. Well, plus you weren't exactly, but you knew I mean, the thing is, I always say, and I say this in every interview, you got to do the work to get into the room. And he was talking about, I think Stuart was talking about a band called Voyager, and their drummer came in with his touring kit, and that wasn't going to go down very well. And by the time he got the sound right, the drummer quit. He said, "No, I'm not doing this anymore."
Yeah. Touring and the studio is two different worlds.
Yeah. People don't know that. I think it was David Henschel who first brought it up. I think it might have been him that said that, like Richard Perry, and he'd worked with Richard Perry. And Richard Perry's famous for like the reel-to-reel loops, you know, over here, and he knew exactly which ones were which. And I'm floored by that kind of person. I'm always intrigued. I married that type of person, but that's kind of cool. I mean, look what the end result was, right?
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Steve Brown, Gus Dudgeon, what's the difference between them? I mean,
Steve was great, and it was such a sad thing. I can tell you this: we Steve moved out to Gibraltar. So we contacted him to be interviewed for my documentary. And unfortunately, Steve had contracted Alzheimer's. That's how he passed away. And so he passed away. He's not with us anymore. Steve was great, a great encouragement. And it really is, it's sad that he's not around, because he could have filled in a lot of things. He was instrumental in Steve was instrumental in bringing Gus and Paul Buckmaster into the loop. Yeah, it was Steve that introduced Elton and Bernie to both those guys, to Paul and to Gus. Yeah.
You take any one of those ingredients out, like you, and later Davy and Dee
Yeah.
and Nigel and Paul,
Yeah.
Bernie. Yeah, but it's interesting how anything could have changed the trajectory of that
Right.
machine.
Right. 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 It was a team, and that's one of the things I think will most probably come to light, hopefully. And we did our best with what we had to convey the idea, the reality that it was, yeah, Elton's very talented, but you can't do it all on your own. It takes a team, and I think that needs to be further addressed. I would hope that Elton would address that more in his documentary that's coming up. I have no idea what they're going to do, but let's not do the fantasy anymore.
Well, the movie, when the movie came out, were Davy and Nigel and Dee not even acknowledged by name? I don't think they were. I don't think so.
No,
Yeah.
it was very wrong.
We'll have more from Caleb Quaye coming up tomorrow. Remember, his documentary is available on YouTube. The link to it, it's a great documentary, is in the description of this video. Remember, if you want to support the channel, there are many ways you can do that. You can subscribe to our channel, of course, share our videos, comment on them, like them. There are links in the description where you can make a donation or join our Patreon. Spread the word, baby. We'd love that. I'm John Beaudin. This is Rock History Music. Take care of yourself.